Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer. Ta-da! Right, so let's compare Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer issue 1 between the actual issue that's been released and what the original one had, because there's quite a few bits that are different, changes, stuff that's been added to this, stuff that's been removed. Obviously the whole layout's changed in the sections and so on, probably from feedback they got after releasing it, or just internally they just decided to change it. Anyway, so obviously we'll just begin with the front cover here. As you can see, the art's changed. From what I could gather, the art for the 4 trial issues was the same art on the front, and as we've seen so far, the art for all the actual adventure magazines are all the same. But in a couple of preview later ones, the art looks different. So as I know, there's a number of different adventurers and you get an encounter in every issue, so I think every time you get a different adventure, you'll get different artwork on the magazine, but we'll wait and see about that. And then obviously they've decided to swap the colour palette too. Don't know why, whether it's to do with because the art swapped or whether someone just said that looks better than that, who knows. And as you can see, the contents as well, apart from the adventure and the play tips, all of this is just different, which we'll see further when we look inside. So just begin with the contents. Originally we had the class lore, which has now become location lore. Obviously they've decided to put the class into all the character creation and just give the actual proper lore its own section. And then also Dungeon Master was its own separate section, which they've now moved into the Sage Advice section, which probably makes a bit more sense because I feel like these two would have run out way before the end of the 80 issues. So now they can just fill out with more lore, and whenever that runs out, they just stop advertising the A or the B for it anyway. Although it does look like the second issue would have had the Phandalin lore, as it shows there in all your next issue, and explains spellcasting, but as we know, they still kept on with that theme anyway. And you'll see here, we've got our first instant of D&D Beyond, which is featured throughout the magazine now. Normally, if they want you to create the characters, they'll just tell you constantly you can go there to do it, which is a useful feature and a bonus to have. Whether it didn't exist or wasn't around when they released the trials, or whether they've just decided to push it a bit more, it's all good. And you can see they've geared it up for new players now, so in your structure of play, it's going to tell you how to use your 7 dice if you don't already know. Let's move on to the Let's Play then, which does start fairly identical, to be honest. And here's the first case internally of, you can see that they've changed the art. They haven't changed the layout yet, but they have changed the art, but further on we'll have art and layout changes in all the pages. Also a printing smear in the 0 issue. The first major change as well. Originally it just went straight to talk about the dice, but now in issue 1 it actually goes to explain the background of the world of D&D first. And then once you get the dice, it moves on to character creation in issue 0, but the first printed issue actually has more to Sage Advice, moving on to the structure of the play and in the DM section. One thing you get in issue 0 that wasn't here is a whole page dedicated to explaining all the dice, which is nice enough to tell you that D20 is the most used dice and D12 is the least used dice, which there's no mention of that in issue 1 at all. Not that that matters. So if we just follow the structure of issue 0 anyway, so we have character creation now. It's changed it from character creation to playing characters, or that's pretty similar, probably because actually now they advertise using D&D Beyond rather than creating them yourself, so you can just go online to do everything anyway. Moving on to the characters, there's a lot more vaster changes. You can see straight away, obviously they've actually changed the art for each character. So originally it titled it as character descriptions, and it was describing each one by how they dress, what their age is, what they look like. Now it's character outlines, and now it talks about them more about their character backgrounds and their professions. So this is more what they look like, and this is more helping with how to play the characters. The ability scores pages are very similar, but now you get more detail about your character skills, and you get less detail about trying to create the characters, which has had, obviously, as they're trying to take it away from creating characters and using pre-built ones or using the D&D Beyond to do it. And then we move on to the next thing. They've gone from race to species. I don't know the significance of the change or if they've decided on different text. But the original issue 0 gives us more information about racial bonuses. The actual magazine doesn't, because it actually already included them in the earlier descriptions of the characters. Character class, again, very similar. Issue 1 now gives us more information about first level. The original issue also mentioned about using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything sourcebook, which I'll discuss in the future issue, for some optional abilities. And that reference is removed now, so we don't have to worry about that in the actual run. Whether or not they'll still talk about it, or whether they should decide not to mention it till later because there's no need, who knows. So talk about the classes as well. Issue 0 gives much more relevant game issue for the particular classes, because obviously you could create them, whereas issue 1 just talks about the pre-generated characters, not so much the class itself. And it mentions spell casting to be talked about later. If we move on to the background and equipment in the issue 0, it talks a lot more about all the available options, so what equipment each character could choose from, and another pack that's not actually included, and then goes into the background of the characters now, which I think catches up a little bit of issue 1. Whereas issue 1 just tells you the 4 main packs. It doesn't tell you about the 5th pack, because again, you're not creating your character, you're just taking what you got. So just here's what you've got to use. Then the next main difference, my lore section now covers Phandalin, so I miss out on the fighter lore for now. And normally though, they'd left that as part of character creation, coloured blue, even though in the contents it was coloured green as a separate bit. So I don't know about that. Before we get into the adventurers and the rest of it, we need to look at combat between the two. So from the outside, both combat magazines or little leaflet handouts look the same. And they are for page 1, but just getting into page 2, you can already see they're starting to change and alter. Issue 0 actually starts off mentioning ranged attacks. Now your pre-generated characters can use ranged, and they don't mention any in issue 1, which seems a bit odd. But I think they must have a more comprehensive section to come in the actual magazines. But just this means when you're playing issue 1, if you want to use ranged, you just treat it like normal combat, I guess, unless you can figure out what all the numbers mean on your own. Issue 0 also talks more about 2-weapon fighting and 2-handed, whereas the new issue 1 just goes more into depth about combat in general. When looking at the determining surprise bit as well, they've removed the section about actively listening for the term surprise, so you only consider passive perception now. In the original combat guide, on the left, you can see it says it was a free action to open the door, and on page 7 of the supplement, they'll give you all the free actions. I'll go to page 7, and nowhere does it give me a list of any of the free actions, to be honest. Even in the next issue of it, there's still no list of free actions. So I don't know where they've gone. The combat example between the two stays pretty much exactly the same, just a couple of minor number variances or errors. Originally, our Dwarven Cleric, as you can see here, she's D8 plus 2, she rolls a 6, so it gives 5 total damage somehow. I don't know how that adding up works. And then when they half it, reduces it to 4, which seems like the correct number if it would have been 8. So a little error there in the numbers. And also we can see here now the Swarm's only got 10 HP remaining after the attack, and yet suggesting here that our Wizard could deliver 6 damage to kill the enemy, even though they've got 10 health. And also rolling 1 is O10 referred to as a critical failure. One thing they did have is originally they gave you a bit of a detailed example about ranged and how it works with short and long range, or normal and long range, sorry. And then when we get to new version, the ranged weapon panel is just a bit more, we'll talk about it later. So it lets you know a little bit, but doesn't tell you about the different ranges or anything. So originally we did know them and then they took it out, but they've decided to obviously explore range in more further detail in a future issue. So you're going to find in Adventure 1 that in the new issue 1, there's a lot more tips supplied than what we have in the original issue 1. See, no tips around there. So it's a lot more helpful for the DMs, especially for new DMs and new players with all the little helpful guides they've got. Also, you can see they've now done a much better job of labeling the map to make it much easier for the DM to use. We're now also able to see at the end of the adventure, originally you just got the Bright Blade. They've now decided not only to give you the Bright Blade, but also to give you potions of healing as well. And you'll get these 2 potions of healing by rescuing the innkeeper, who didn't give you any potions before. Also, the Shining Light bonus action originally provided by Brightblade has now been removed, so it's just a basic weapon. As they haven't really talked about bonus actions as highlighted a minute ago, they probably removed that just so you don't have to worry about bonus actions yet, and then in a future issue I imagine they'll introduce them. The actual issue 1 it now also mentions that the unaligned rats, it mentions about alignment and will be covered in a future issue. Before that was just listed on the stat block for the monster, so a new player would have no idea what it's on about. They've also removed the challenge line there of a quarter 50 XP from the swarm of rats, possibly because the XP is going to be fixed for the whole adventure no matter what, and they'll have a fixed level up time, or the challenge just isn't needed, who knows. And the last bit in the actual magazine itself is the original issue came with a spare character sheet for creating your own characters, whereas the issue 1 does not. And obviously, as we've already discussed, this is already about using pre-gen or going on the website to do it, whereas this was making you do it yourself, even though it didn't provide you with half the tools you needed. But talk about the character sheets, let's check out those 2. So looking at the character sheets, obviously these were the original and this is what's come with issue 1. We can see a lot of general changes as well as some specific changes for each character. But for instance, we used to have Rogue 1 and we had space experience points. Now we just have a level space on the character sheet. We're not going to have to record experience at all through the 80 episodes. By the looks of it, we'll just get guaranteed level ups. Unless at some point they're going to give us revised character sheets, which could happen because there's a couple more stats that are missing that could be added later. Such as info was removed for insight and investigation. The only thing that remained is the passive wisdom for perception. If we look over here at the rapier, we can see they've removed martial from the notes bit. Could be because they've actually explained the difference between martial and simple weapons now. But either way, it's gone from there. Unarmed strike's also been removed from the character sheet, possibly because I don't expect you to need it, at least for the first couple of episodes. They've changed the format down here as well, so it no longer looks like he has a hand as part of his weapons. Unless that's why they removed unarmed strike, maybe. But in Crantor's equipment, you will see he now has his deck of marked cards, that he should do. Moving on to Rezagar, you can see originally initiative was +1, which they've now changed to -1. And the hit points have decreased from 11 to 10. But does that mean they're now ignoring Dwarven toughness? Who knows? It could be a bit of find and replace error, because it used to say it took 11 minutes for casting a ritual spell, which has also now been reduced to 10 minutes for casting it. Looking at the weapons, the Warhammer again has had the martial tag removed, and again unarmed strike has been removed from the attacks. And this unarmed strike was better than the original, but I feel like that's strength related. I don't know. Eventually they'll probably tell us in an issue, but until then, I haven't got a clue. Adding unique equipment to the list again, so they now have the prayer book. However, also now have 7 blocks of incense compared to 2 originals, which is actually incorrect if you check out in the equipment pack guide. Going over to the spells, and as you can see, they've been arranged, so we've now got the cantrips sort of from the spells. We've gone from 3 spell slots to 2 spell slots. Again, I think we discussed earlier, that seemed like incorrect. And ceremony here has also been removed from the spell list. Not sure why that is. And now we get into the complete changes made to Arenia. For starters, they've now put the saving throw proficiencies in strength and constitution correctly, compared to originally when they had the dots in wisdom and charisma for some reason. The longbow is now no longer a martial weapon, neither is the short sword, and unarmed strike has now been replaced by both a hand axe and a quarterstaff. We've got the unique item animal trophy added to the equipment list, and the trance also has been updated or changed. Before it said you could finish a long rest in 4 hours instead of 8, whereas now it says it takes 4 hours out of the 8, so you can still do light activities you're on a long rest. And when we get to Merovich, pipe and tobacco is now gone, instead for a quill and letter from a dead colleague posing the question you have yet to answer. Again with the control F, so spell casting rituals aren't 11 minutes now, they're actually 10 minutes to prep. And on the back, other than what was talked about before with the spells, you can see again they've just sorted out all of Merovich's spells into cantrips and then first level spells. And the final thing included with the issues was the leaflets. So looking closely at the art, you can actually see the character sheets, and if you look very carefully you can see there's no passive perception actually listed on that character sheet at all. It's a bit odd as everything else remains the same. I didn't notice it before, but this is probably one of the main reasons they've changed the art, so stuff like the character sheets that they've changed all match up. We can take a couple of closer look at some of these, but I haven't actually looked to see if they're the correct character sheets or not, compared with the version they should be. Although my camera sees the details much better than I can actually physically see looking at my bare eyes. Well, it'll just be something I'll have to have a quick look at later to browse, but it probably won't be included in the video. So according to the magazines, the Dungeon Master section is still included from 0 to 1, which I haven't seen yet, so maybe they will have a section, or maybe they just haven't bothered to change it actually, because apart from updating the art, this all looks pretty similar in the actual layout, and letting us know that the prices of the issues binders rather have increased from $9.99 to $10.99, which is expected. As well, you can see they've expanded a bit to let us know that all the adventures are colour coded. Not even Encounters Adventure, so black, red and gold is the whole Adventure 1 for how long it lasts. Rainbow to Adventure 2, we're going to have black, blue and silver, and you can see the art's changed in the magazine, so that's what I'm expecting to see when we finish our first adventure. And both of these are telling us 4 gifts, even though they're both picture 5, which is just odd. Anyway, the keyring's now been replaced for a dice tray, and the dice tower has now gone to a dice jail. I might prefer the tower more than the jail, but I definitely prefer the mat more than the keyring, so up and down. And binder art has changed, as well as the actual cover art. And our 7 exclusive dice and guide to spellcasting has now become 7 gold dice, even though they're the same, and an exclusive adventure map. I don't think that one included the map actually. I'll have to see if I can find out. You can see just at the bottom, this is copyright 2022, this is copyright 2023. So 1 year apart has made the price difference of the pound, and so on. And so there you have it. That was all the differences from the original issue 1 trial one, which I keep calling issue 0, to the actual issue 1 release. Hopefully at some point I'll get to do the same for issue 2. I don't have issue 2 from the trial run. I want to see if I get a copy of it, but if not, I've seen a couple of clips online where I can get some sort of data, hopefully. Other than that, I hope you found that interesting. Not really useful because not many people have that and you wouldn't use it anyway, you'd use the new copy. But there we go. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you again soon.